That's the Carnivore Police coming for you. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So a lot of people worry about being strict carnivore, and a lot of people want to make sure that whoever they're talking to or listening to in this carnivore space, they're trying to get advice from strict carnivores. Now, the problem with some strict carnivores is they can be real douches about it. If you've ever been in a Facebook group, like Zeroing In on Health is a good one. There's some groups, and I had a Facebook group for a while just for a specific challenge I was doing. And there were very specific rules to that challenge. Now, it was my challenge that other people were kind of following along with. And so I had very specific rules. And rule number one was don't be a douche. So what happens is when you ask just genuine questions in these carnivore groups, or people are giving advice in these carnivore groups, every now and then you get someone, whether it's just for the sake of what they think is comedy, or whether it's because they are just they feel like they're on this really high level because they're extremely strict, they can come across rather harsh. And it's one thing to be direct, it's another thing to be harsh. And it's something I've seen a lot in the carnivore space on Facebook groups. So it can be discouraging for people out there who are trying to just start carnivore, or people who want to up their carnivore game, or people who maybe aren't internet savvy and they haven't realized that you can actually use the space bar in those Facebook groups to type in word searches so you can figure out the answer to your question. But nonetheless, you can get lots of really kind of vicious people. And some people are just maybe having a bad day, or maybe they're just jerks in general. But the Carnivore Police are out there. And if you're not succeeding on your carnivore diet and you're worried about mentioning that to people because you're worried about getting judged or chastised in some way because you're not as strict as others, maybe you have to keep in mind, why are you doing carnivore and why are you at the level that you're doing it at? So you might be fine with being 95% strict or 80% strict. I have no idea. I'm 100% strict. I don't have a lick, taste, or bite of anything off of a carnivore diet because I have a sugar and carbohydrate addiction. We'll get into that in a minute. But for the most part, you have to understand why you're doing it. Are you doing it for your energy? Well, I know people who do carnivore 90-95%, and their energy is really good. And whenever they go 100%, it gets even better. Joint health is another reason. I had my friend's wife doing that for her joint health because she had some broken bones, a broken foot specifically. And I think a year went by before she was still dealing with this intense pain in her foot. And she also had bad arthritic knees. And she was only in her early 40s, late 30s. And I suggested zero carb or carnivore diet. And she always noticed the cleaner her diet was, the more that pain went away. And she found her sweet spot. She was maybe 90-95% strict, and it managed her pain really well. And whenever her pain started to come back, she could stop and think, well, you know what? I have been kind of cheating a little bit more than usual lately. But she needed variety in her diet, and doing carnivore just wasn't enough for her. And she didn't mind having a little bit here or there off a carnivore diet. Now, if she wanted to get strict, that's something she would have to focus on. And it was a bit of a challenge for her, but she noticed the benefits when she did it. But was it worth the benefits? Do some people have a sugar and carbohydrate addiction like I do, where they have to be 100% strict and abstain from anything off a carnivore diet? I think lots of people are in that other camp, and they can just be a moderator, and they can have a few potato chips, or they can have a little bit of ice cream or a little bit of pizza or whatever it is. They can have a bite here or there, and it doesn't faze them. The problem is a bite for me leads to a whole binging episode of that food, and I don't want to go down that road again. So I'm an abstainer, not a moderator. So the first thing you have to ask yourself really is, are you an abstainer or moderator? Can you manage 5 potato chips and not obsess over it for the next little while? Will that trigger you to go have something else off your carnivore diet? If that food is triggering for you, then you might be an abstainer. If you have triggers, you're probably addicted to carbohydrates, because it's not normal to be addicted to anything. Now, if you're doing it for weight loss purposes, maybe you have to be as strict as possible. But that being said, some people can just do carnivore, and just from cleaning up their diet, just like I think why vegan works for a lot of people, just from cleaning up your diet and not having as much processed food or junk food, right off the bat, you're going to lose a lot of weight. But being zero carb, you might have to be extra strict to get there. Now, I've lost 160 pounds doing a zero carb diet, and I find whenever I go high fat, I put weight on until I eventually lose it. Like I'll put it on over a period of weeks or months. And then all of a sudden when it goes really fast. But I find I've still been at this plateau, even though I've been zero carb. So I have insulin resistance. And no matter what I do, exercise, diet, fasting, you name it, I've tried lots of different things. I've still been at this plateau. What seems to work best for me, I feel best when I do high fat carnivore when it comes to my energy and how I feel. But what works most consistent for me is just steady carnivore. And I just slowly lose weight in inches. So that works really well for me. It's just really slow and I'm fine with that. But it's like, we're talking like, 10 pounds in 6 months at best, right? So I'm not complaining about that. But the interesting thing is it's just slow for me. Other people, they usually get fast results when it comes to weight loss, whether they're mostly strict or extremely strict. Now, when it comes to your blood work and your doctor wants to see certain numbers, sometimes there's a difference between mostly strict and strict. And you want to make sure if you're doing this for healthy reasons, you're not just eating clean for a week before your blood work. You're not just doing something like that because you're cheating the numbers. It's not really accurate, right? If you know your blood pressure gets better when you're a strict carnivore and your heart rate, doing that a week or two before your exam isn't beneficial, is it? Because you're just cheating their doctor, you're cheating yourself more than anything, and you're living in a more unhealthy way outside of the doctor's office. And for you, maybe you're completely off a carnivore diet and you just do this for those blood tests. Or maybe you're doing it just so that your doctor's not going to chastise you when you go in there and he's going to say, hey, your blood pressure's up. You want to make sure, especially when you get your blood pressure, by the way, they don't take your blood pressure right away. When you go and sit in your doctor's office, you make sure they don't take it for at least 10 minutes, because just walking from the waiting room to the doctor's office and sitting down is going to raise your blood pressure. Just doing that. Even if you're healthy, it's going to raise your blood pressure and it's an accurate reading. So you want to make sure that blood pressure test is always as accurate as possible and make sure you've been sitting for a good 10 minutes. Like I said, if you're an abstainer or moderator, that's really the biggest thing you need to understand when it comes to being strict with carnivore. That means you have to be strict versus you're trying to be as strict as you can. And most people just always watching themselves, maybe they're going to do extremely well on that. And maybe after a while, if they're not an abstainer, they can slowly open up other foods in their diet. Now, I tried that and it was a slippery slope and I went right off the carnivore diet. Well, it was actually a zero carb diet at the time and I ballooned right back up really fast. I put on the weight almost as fast as I lost the weight. But I've also been doing this for other health reasons. Weight loss is just the side effect as my body gets healthier doing carnivore. That's the interesting thing I've noticed about carnivore. When you're doing carnivore, your health problems go away before the weight loss. Usually your health problems go away after the weight loss. As you keep losing weight, your health problems one by one start getting better and better. With carnivore, I've noticed it's really opposite for most things. The only thing I'm still dealing with is high fasting insulin, which is making my heart disease more risky. I already had heart disease long before I became carnivore. So for any of you people out there who are pointing your finger at carnivore for heart disease, this has nothing to do with that. This has predated my carnivore way of eating for years. I've been a strict carnivore for 3.5 years now, and I haven't looked back. It's worth it to me. I feel good. Most of my blood tests come back great. The only issue I really have is my fasting insulin and anything related to that. But most of my other health problems have completely gone into remission. So whatever the reason, I just want you to keep in mind when you're looking for advice, go to people who are willing to talk to you. Putting something out there in like a Facebook group is not always the best way to go, because depending on the group, you might get snapped at because there's Carnivore Police out there. And sometimes they're working for the Facebook group as an administrator, and sometimes they're just douches that are out there. And you just had a simple question. So Kelly Hogan offers coaching groups. You can find her on Instagram and on her YouTube channel, My Zero Carb Life. And if you have questions, approach someone who seems approachable, because you might get discouraged, because some people out there still have that cult mentality when it comes to carnivore, just like there is with veganism. They're so strict and they assume everyone should be that strict as well. And some people don't need to be that strict. If I didn't have to be this strict, I probably wouldn't, but I just know myself and I have to be this strict. So don't worry about the Carnivore Police. No one's going to be knocking at your door because you had a pickle or something like that. But try not to do yourself the injustice and the disservice to yourself from having something off the carnivore diet if you know. But that being said, thanks a lot for watching. Take care.